All right, welcome back everyone to the deep dive. We're diving into something pretty monumental this time.
Oh, yeah.
We're tackling the Genesis creation narrative.
Big one.
Specifically Genesis 1.110 from the King James Version of the Bible. Now, even if you think you know this story by heart,
Right.
we're going to look for those details that often get missed.
I think there are a lot.
Ready to go.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so right off the bat, we hit verse 1, which says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth."
Okay.
But wait, if there's a beginning, what was there before the beginning?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? And it's a question that's puzzled theologians and philosophers for centuries.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the very idea of a beginning implies that there was something before that beginning, right? And so that suggests that maybe the beginning we're talking about here isn't the absolute beginning of everything, but rather the beginning of a specific creative process.
Okay, so maybe thinking about it in terms of like a typical timeline,
Yeah.
where it's just a straight line starting at point A. Maybe that's not the best way to look at this.
I think that's right. I mean, some theologians interpret this as pointing to God's eternal nature, existing outside of time and space as we understand it.
Okay, so then what does this early Earth even look like? We're at the beginning, supposedly.
Right. Well, the text describes it as without form and void, covered in darkness. And then there's this really evocative image, the Spirit of God moving upon the face of the waters.
I've always found that image so striking.
It is, isn't it? It really captures the sense of primordial chaos, like a blank canvas, pure potential waiting to be shaped.
Right, so in this formless void,
Yeah.
we have the Spirit of God as this active force. But how do we interpret that Spirit of God? Is it literal, metaphorical?
Good question. There's no one definitive answer. Interpretations vary depending on different theological perspectives. Some see it as a wind or a breath, a kind of like life-giving force that's animating the waters. Others connect it to the concept of wisdom or divine presence that's sort of overseeing and guiding this whole process of creation.
So it's not just random, there's a purpose behind it.
Exactly. There's intentionality there.
So many ways to read into that.
Yeah.
But then we move into something very familiar, a very famous line, "Let there be light." And
Right.
suddenly there's light, there's darkness, there's day and night, all created through words. It's just so simple, yet so profound.
I know, it's really striking. This is where we really see the power of divine speech.
Right.
Like God speaks and reality comes into being. And it's interesting, this whole concept of creation through words.
Yeah.
It isn't unique to the Bible. It echoes across different cultures. We see it in ancient Egyptian mythology.
Oh, wow.
We see it in indigenous creation stories all over the world.
It really makes you think, is it about the literal spoken word, or is there something deeper about intention and will?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And it ties into that whole idea of, words having power. And then, of course, the creation of light also introduces this concept of separation.
Right.
Light is divided from darkness, day from night. So it establishes a fundamental order, a kind of rhythm to the universe. And, this rhythm is something that we still experience every day, right? The cycle of day and night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm struck by the act of naming, too. Like light becomes day, darkness becomes night.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's crucial. Naming is an act of creation. It's bringing things into being, giving them identity. And it's not just with light and darkness. This pattern of naming continues throughout the whole creation narrative.
It's a bit like God is defining the world, right?
Yeah.
Bringing order to chaos through language.
Exactly. It's all about establishing order and structure.
And then we move on to day 2 and the creation of the firmament. So this is where things start to get a little
tricky.
A little tricky, yeah, for me at least.
Yeah.
So we have this dome-like structure, this firmament, that separates the waters above from the waters below. But if we think about what we know now about the universe and space, the idea of a solid sky dome seems a bit, off.
Yeah, it does sound strange to modern ears, doesn't it? But we have to remember, this is reflecting the cosmological understanding of the time when the text was written. Many ancient cultures envisioned the universe this way.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They pictured a flat Earth enclosed by a solid dome. And up above the dome, you got the celestial waters. And then below the dome, you have the earthly waters.
I never realized that was such a common belief.
Oh, yeah. Very common. And remember, what does God call this firmament?
Well, heaven.
Heaven, exactly.
Okay, so in this story, heaven is a physical place,
Mm.
part of the created order. It's not this abstract concept we might think of today.
Yeah. It's very much a tangible part of the universe.
And it really shows how our ideas about heaven have evolved over time.
Absolutely. The firmament in this context, it acts as a boundary between the earthly realm and the divine. But it also connects them.
Right.
Because the rain that falls from those waters above, that sustains life down below.
Right. It's a link between the two.
Exactly.
And then finally we reach day 3, where we see the creation of land and sea. So the waters are gathered together, dry land appears, and we see the act of naming again.
Yes.
Earth and seas, it's like the narrative is building on itself layer by layer.
No, it is. Absolutely. It goes from formlessness to form, from darkness to light, from water to land. And each step brings more complexity, more order and structure. And what does God say about each of these creations?
It's good. That word really stands out to me.
It's powerful, isn't it? It really emphasizes that creation is not just random,
Yeah.
but it's purposeful, it's intentional, and it suggests that there's this inherent value built into creation from the very beginning.
Which then makes you think about humanity's place in all this.
Mm-hmm.
If creation is inherently good, how does that inform the way we treat the natural world?
Yeah.
How we interact with it?
Huge questions, right? What is our role? What is our responsibility? That's something that people are still grappling with today.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive. We've unpacked a lot in just these 10 verses. We've seen how the Genesis creation narrative emphasizes order from chaos, the power of divine speech,
Right.
and the deeper meaning behind these simple acts like naming.
And it's just the beginning.
It is.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore. But here's one final thought for all of you listening out there. We've been exploring how ancient cultures viewed this story.
Right.
But think about how our understanding of the universe has changed over time, through science, exploration, all of that. How does that new knowledge affect the way we interpret these verses? Can we find meaning and relevance in these ancient texts, even in our modern world? These are questions that I hope you'll keep pondering as you continue your own deep dive into Genesis.
Wonderful.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Bye, everyone.